I was wrong. That's not a home light in that home light box. It was a Poland Pro 4620. Uh, Super clean. Anyway, like most saws that I get to work on, it was a tuning issue. It opens up great, and the idle's great now that I adjusted the idle screw and everything. And I had to prime it with a little gas down the carb to get it turned over. I mean, I could have pulled, and it probably would have eventually fired up, but that way I put that gas down the carb, and that way I knew if it even run. If you put gas down the carb and it doesn't run, it's probably going to be a spark issue. You're not getting enough fire to it. So you need to check your coil, spark plug, the coil wire, and all that kind of stuff. But if you put gas down the carb and it fires up and it runs, then you know it's something to do with the carburetor. And a lot of times, if they haven't set forever, or it's not just an old saw or whatever, a lot of times you can fix your saw yourself with just a little bit of tuning. And if you don't have the special tools, some of them just take flathead screwdrivers, small flathead screwdriver you can tune. But there's plenty of tuning videos on YouTube of great saw guys tuning saws. Watch some of them and play with them screws till you get it running and get it running right. I mean, if your saw's not running, you're not going to be in any worse shape than what you were to begin with. So, play with them screws, carb screws, till you get it running right, and then that'll save you from having to take it to the shop and them charging you money just to turn two screws that you could do. But anyway, that's just a little tip that I was going to bring up, because this guy, he's giving me these two saws. This one may have more problems, but I took the cover off that, had it about 5 minutes, had it running good, and it don't die out like my Barn Fine 291C did, and some other things that I've had to work on. Now, I have had that little 435 Husqvarna that was a gift to me. The lady thought it was blowing up or fixing to blow up because it would backfire something terrible through the muffler. I mean, first 5 minutes when it was still cool but a little bit warm, it'd run like crazy, And then after that thing got good and hot, it'd start spitting and sputtering backfire. You thought it was going to blow up in your hand, and it ended up being needed a new coil on it. So simple things like that. If you have any kind of mechanical or do-it-yourself kind of skills, then you can. I think you can do it. And if not, there's plenty of good YouTube guys out there that work on saws and whatnot, and they will have videos showing how to tune carbs and work on things a little bit, coils and whatnot. You can pretty much find anything on YouTube. I may record this just to show you the process of getting a saw started. I wish I would have recorded that one, but I didn't know what all I was going to get into. But all right, so this is what I'm talking about. I got this little Craftsman, and I know it's not been running in some time. You want to make sure your saw's on, and you don't need to put a lot of gas because it could flood it out. Normally, I've got this little cap. I need to get me a little squirter or something to hold gas and squirt gas. That's not good. That's too much. But anyway, I'll just give it a little douse in there like that, and then I'll go to choke it like I'm choking it. Make sure it's on. It started earlier. I may have this thing flooded. Yeah, I got quite a bit of gas in it. I don't have enough gas in it. But it's trying to hit, so I know it's got fire right there. I don't know if all my gas that I doused in there or not, because it's got a little cover on it. only half my gas is getting in there, so I may not have enough gas. All right, so it hit. So I know that it's got fire and it will run. Off what little gas that I put in there. Whew, that's one right out pouring on it. So I know that this is the same way that I done the Poland that I was talking about earlier. But where this one didn't want to run, and I may put some gas in it and see just a little bit. Well, that's what we'll do. Let's see if it'll pick it up. But this thing is bone dry, and the primer bulb I think is about shot, so I don't want to put a lot of gas in it in case I have to drain it. I ain't gonna put but about a quarter of a tank in it, enough that I know that it's going to pick up and run. Pick it up, you know. It may need a fuel filter, it may need a primer bulb. That's something you don't know. Well, it's priming, so the primer bulb may be a little weak. It's got gas coming plumb out of it. The car may be hung open, I don't know. Alright, so it's barely wanting to idle. So what I'm going to do is get my flat screwdriver and find that idle screw, and I'm going to turn it in like I'm screwing it in. That gives you more idle. On the low and the high jets, when you screw them in, like you're tightening them, that gives it less fuel. When you back them out, that opens it up for more fuel. So you just play with that until you do it. But I've given it a little more idle, and it's got gas pouring out of it, so it may have a problem. It may flood itself out. One of the jets may be hung open, or something like that. I don't know what to do. It may be flooding itself out. For real. We got gas everywhere. Still ain't wanting to run. So I'm gonna give it quite a bit of idle. And it may be a bad carb. The diaphragm may not be pumping right. A lot of times it's got a Zama carb. Zama carbs, they're good, I think. That's the one man's opinion. I believe the Zama carbs are pretty decent if you run your saw often. If you're going to use your saw, a couple times a month. But I think that if you just store it away for the summer, vice versa, store it away from the winter, depending on what you do with it, and your tank's empty, or the Zama carb goes dry fuel, then the diaphragms in them are weak, and I think they get soft where they don't want to pump right. Because I've had 2 Zama carbs, one on that 291C barn find steel, had the same issue, and then I had one on Makita 7900 that I had. I sold it right before I started my YouTube channel, and I got me a 390 Husqvarna. That's how I got my 390 Husqvarna. But I was going to sell that on eBay, so I drained all the fuel out and cleaned it up, drained all the fuel out of the tank. Then I started it and run all the fuel out of the carb, so there was no fuel in that saw whatsoever, because the guy had bought it. or said he was going to buy it. Well, he won. He bid on it, won on it, whatever. Said he was going to buy it now or whatever. And I don't know how many people's had any dealings with eBay, but you gotta send them an invoice, and then they decide whether to pay. It's a couple-day process to get everything squared away if they pay on time. Well, this guy never did end up coming up with the money. I don't know if he wanted to hold my listing up, because there was another saw on there just like mine that was about $500 more higher than what mine was. They was asking like $1,300 or $1,400 for it, and I had mine for like $850, $900. But anyway, so I drained it. Well, then after all that, I decided I wasn't going to mess with eBay, and I had it on Facebook Marketplace, and the guy, a couple counties below me, he in another state, he wanted to buy it. So I told him that's fine to come on, and so I put gas in it. He told me he'd be there in the weekend or whatever, a couple weeks, I can't remember. And well, I put gas in it, gonna fire it up, make sure everything run right still. Well, it would start up and run and everything, and run pretty decent, but you had to mess with the tune quite a bit, and it would flood itself out. I don't know if something was hung open, it got hung open in it, because where it was dry and some dust or a little particle got in there, but it would flood itself out. I was fouling plugs out like crazy, so I ended up, of course, had to get another Zama carb, put it on there, and it worked perfect. So I typically put new carbs on instead of rebuilding them, just because this thing's gonna sit here and got cold on me. Let's choke it too. All right. She likes choke. Ain't getting enough fuel. Turn that idle back down. Now that I know that it's going to start starving itself for fuel, and these Zama carbs, they'll be either flooding it or starving it. There ain't no just happy medium where you can about halfway get it running. Most of the time. Still up on the idle quite a bit. Okay, so it's running on the choke. So that makes me think that, get all lid off. It's all husky. Let's see what this low jet's setting at now. This is what I'm talking about. The low jet's typically closest to the cylinder, and the high jet's typically closest to the air filter on every saw that I've ever messed with. So I've got my screwdriver. I got a little mark on my screwdriver, and I'm gonna get it top dead center, or what I'm considering top dead center, and I'm just going to see where they're at on the adjustment. There's one. There's two. Golly, that's, yeah, fat. I'm going to try it on one. It may be flooding itself out. Typically, factory settings for a carb, and some vary, you know, typically each setting high and low jets one turn out. I have seen a few Husqvarnas, my 435 and 440, they like to run about a turn and a half out. I've got them Echoes after I've done the muffler mods, they run about a turn and a half out. And my 372 Husqvarna, it runs about a turn and a quarter, depending on the weather too, and then the weather makes a big difference in it. So yeah, you know, it's a lot to take in, but you need to know how to tune your carb regardless, just for weather change, because if it goes from 30 degrees to 90 degrees, you know, when you run it dead of winter, and then you have to fire it up in the summertime to cut some limbs to mow or something. it ain't gonna run right. It helps if they'll stay running. And I'm having to turn with a choke on. You don't really want to do that I'm going to try to tune the car. I'm going to know the phone I'm going to try to tune the car, but now everybody does it a little different. But as long as you come out good in the end, it's all that matters. And I may have it a little too flooded there in the beginning or something. So just play with it a little bit, and then it may save you from having to take it to the shop. get it to where my chain is spinning the fastest if I've got it idled up. And then go a little faster there. It would have been a little different with the air filter back in there. And then I shut it off and turn it in to see what I was at, and then set it right back, check it. Carb is a little laggy. You'll see it died again there. And I don't know how many times I was in or out. Let's see. There's 1, 2 and a half. Golly. There's 2. Let's try it there. Turn the idle back up. Which, I mean, if you're just wanting to cut something quick, and you don't use a saw every day for a living, then hell. If it's running like this, you've got to idle it up a little higher what you want to, as long as the chain ain't spinning, that'd be alright. Like I say, I may run it out of fuel. Fuel. Let's give it a little less to begin with. Now we may need to give a little more, 2 1/4. Like, I mean, I guess some saws may take it, but to me, that just don't seem practical. Don't seem practical at all. But if you got a janky carb, it'll be sporadic like this. You can tune it and run it for a few minutes, and then it ain't gonna be worth it. Then we'll leave it at 2 1/4. Great? No, it's not great. But anyway, and that's how you can get you a chainsaw that's been sitting still to start at least and see what the problem is. We'll see you later. Thanks. God bless. Have a good one.